and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And I know we've been hard on the Pope in recent weeks, but we want to give him some credit. He kisses gay people before he screws them.
I'm afraid he's still our top story this week as we try to sort out the mystery that is the Vatican and Liberty Counsel. But not so much mystery at the Human Rights Campaign, where both Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden showed up over the weekend to make speeches to the LGBT community. Very similar speeches, but we'll try to parse a few nuances.
Here's a headline. An anti-gay bill in North Carolina's legislature died.
Very interesting. And a victory for a transgender employee against Hobby Lobby in Illinois, although there's a wrinkle to that, too.
There was another murder of a transgender woman of color in Philadelphia and of a gay man in Detroit.
And another family values politician has gone down in a sex scandal.
We'll tell you why the TPP is bad for LGBT.
That's the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement.
Yes.
Illinois is taking a novel approach to sexually transmitted infection prevention, cutting off funding to county health departments for it. Kind of like the way Alabama is closing down their driver's license bureaus.
We will get to all that.
Will we?
Yes.
Good.
I finally saw the movie Stonewall, and we both saw Freeheld,
right,
with Julianne Moore and Ellen Page as a lesbian couple, and we will have our reviews.
We will expound on those. And Spring Awakening is back on Broadway in a unique production led by deaf actors.
Yes.
Andy will tell you about that.
So, all right.
All right, so we're still on the Pope and Kim Davis and all the rest of them.
Since we last left you, well, there was this, the news had broken that he had met with Kim Davis, this busy trip in Washington. And then this real debate sprang up. Well, was he set up by the Archbishop in Washington who doesn't like him?
Because he's a loyalist of Benedict, the previous Pope, and they're out to get this one.
This was the papal nuncio, essentially the secretary, the ambassador to America, who was exiled here. Vigano, I'm told, is the way you say his name.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, and then others said, no, this was the National Conference of Catholic Bishops who also don't like Francis trying to embarrass him, and then Francis didn't know who she was, and But here's the thing: the Pope, you got every opportunity to clear it up, and you're not doing it. It would be very nice to have a clear statement from the Pope on, if you're a Catholic and you're working for the government, do you have to fulfill your obligations, or you can claim conscience and say, I don't want to do gay marriages. It would be very good to have a clear statement about that.
Well, I don't care what he says about that, because I'm not taking my directions from him. But I am, of course, intrigued by the internal politics of the Vatican, because I'm a political junkie for any of this stuff in almost any setting. I'm curious about Putin, too, and the whole, the way he's trying to get the United States on Syria. But I do think there remains this question, and I don't think the Pope has done anything to lead us to believe that while he supports every bit of Catholic doctrine, that he set out to hold up Kim Davis as some kind of saint or hero or example.
But people are saying, I don't believe this was an individual 15-minute meeting. This was part of a line of people that he was just going through and everything. And I say, blessed are those who have not seen and believe but I want to see the pictures. They had the papal photographer there taking pictures. I want to see the pictures.
They had selfies by Kim and her husband in a side room.
Before they met him.
Yes.
But they were alone. They weren't with a whole gaggle of bigots.
I'd put them in a side room too. But you have to consider the sources on all this. And Liberty Counsel and Matt Staver are the main source saying, oh no, we got the call from the Vatican. So we have to backtrack a little
Matt
here.
Staver of Liberty Counsel makes a very good point. Hey, she's one of the most famous bigots in America. He wouldn't call it that. If we were in a group of people, you don't think this would have gotten out immediately? It would have gotten out immediately.
I think that's a little much. I don't think we need to.
Okay.
I think that's maybe not.
We don't really like any of them.
No, we certainly don't. But here's what you have to backtrack to. There was a big National Organization for Marriage rally in Washington some time ago, which Liberty Counsel and Matt Staver were main players at.
And the papal nuncio came. Controversially.
Came. And they met. And I'm sure that they had a lot to talk about and to become very friendly about. So when the story from Matt Staver is that when Kim got out of jail, they immediately got a call from the papal nuncio in Washington saying, bring her to Washington for the Pope's visit. And they were coming anyway for the Values Voters Summit, and I think they came a day early so that they could be around for the Pope. And so is that the Vatican telling the papal nuncio, or is the papal nuncio doing it on his own? Is he doing it in consultation with the bishops in the United States?
Well, one of the heads of the Catholic bishops is the Kentucky bishop, so that's her home state. Anyway.
Well, there are and I was reminded that Matt Staver and Liberty Counsel also have been involved with representing Scott Lively, who is on trial in Springfield, Mass. for spreading homophobia in homicidal ways to Africa.
He would say spreading Christ's gospel.
Exactly. So would Matt Staver. And Matt Staver and Liberty Counsel are also involved in defending Lisa Miller, the ex-lesbian who fled to Central America with her child so that her ex-wife or lover could not have any access to seeing the child.
Who had legal rights to see her.
Exactly, and which had been decided by the courts of Vermont. But they took off, and they're still, the FBI is trying to track her down, and that's a whole big thing. Matt Staver and the Liberty Counsel are at the extremes on this stuff. So they have to be careful about telling lies that could be disproved by photographs or film also. Peru. Yes, they have a track record that is not truthful.
So the people who do want to believe in the Pope said, well, actually they were aided by the Pope's gay friend. We talked about him last week. He met with a gay friend and his friend's lover. This guy's 67. He used to be a student of Bergoglio.
They've known each other for 50 years.
Yeah, they're old friends. Yeah. And they took a videotape of the encounter with the Pope in the...
Let's do a little backstory there. Yeah. The guy is... in contact with the Pope on an ongoing basis by email occasionally. Yes. He objected to the Pope years ago having come out against gay marriage. And
when the Pope came out against gay marriage in Argentina, the first thing he did was he talked to some nuns and he said, this is the devil's work. And that got out. He didn't want that to get out, but it got out. So that's when his friend wrote and said, I can't believe you're saying this. You're my pal. And he said, there is no
homophobia in my ministry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Well, I mean, what does that mean? You don't bite us? You don't chop our heads off anymore or burn us at the stake?
How many right-wing leaders have we seen with gay or lesbian children who seem to live these bifurcated lives?
Phyllis Schlafly.
Exactly the example I was going to use. But only Barry Goldwater changed his mind with his gay grandson. But there's a lot of this.
And Rob Portman.
This cognitive, yes, you're
from
right.
Ohio.
There are two camps. There are those who have their LGBT relatives come out to them. What's her name in Florida, who has a trans son or daughter. People do learn, but there's this whole other camp of people who seem to engage in cognitive dissonance and continue with their right-wing ways, even in the face of their LGBT
the
relatives.
Mississippi governor has a gay son.
Yeah,
and he's
exactly.
horrible.
Thank you
No,
for supplying all the examples.
The son is very nice.
Yeah. So it does not surprise me that the Pope can continue with first with his ministry and now his popeism, while having gay friends.
But the gay friend in this case, and we have video of the encounter between the Pope and the gay friend, Grassi, is that his name?
Yes, and clearly the Pope did reach out to him saying, please come visit me.
I'd like to give you a hug.
Yes.
So do we have a little
he
of that?
called him.
We have a little of that video, we could run it.
Yes.
They're all speaking Spanish. So we apologize, we don't have subtitles. I haven't heard it translated.
So
there's the gay friend in the jacket.
Yeah.
I think the woman is his mother, but his boyfriend is is with them too, and so he kisses the friend,
Who
and
kind of paws him a little.
Then he kisses his old friend, his gay friend, and then he kisses the lover on both cheeks.
Yes, reaches out to him with great friendship.
And
hi.
He's very friendly. But the thing is, that's not what we're looking for from the. It's nice that he treats them nicely, but when he goes back to Rome, the first thing he says is, because they're running the synod on the family now in Rome, and the first thing he says is, God's dream is fulfilled in the loving union between a man and a woman. I didn't know God had these kind of dreams, but I say amen to that. I think God could also, your God, could have a nice dream about two people of the same sex getting it on. Most priests seem to enjoy it. Well, this is part of our story this week.
Oh, we'll get to that. But a couple of things. First, I really am fascinated by what's going to come out of the end of this synod. Will there be changes?
In about 2 more weeks.
Yes. Well, remember that in all the ramping up to this synod, they've gone through a year of research, investigation, and a preparatory paper was written that was quite liberal and then got censored and pulled back.
Yeah, well, they voted and they said, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah, I'm not optimistic that they will make any changes. But the Pope is standing up and saying things like the Catholic doctrine should not be a museum to keep or preserve, and seems to be arguing for at least more welcoming rhetoric. Because he's trying to preserve the damn church before everybody leaves it.
That's another quote. He said, the church must be more welcoming, charitable, compassionate, and merciful to all people. But I don't want your mercy. I want you to butt out of politics.
Yes.
You can teach your own people whatever you want. I think it's unfortunate that you do this, especially since most of your priesthood is gay. I mean, there was this German theologian who used to work in the Vatican who gave an interview about this week, and he was a priest before, and he said it's about 50% gay priests and more in the Vatican. They go in there because they want to repress who they are. They work very hard. They get ahead. There's a lot of other gay people. There's a gay network, a closeted network that puts them in there.
As in Washington, D.C. in our government. And there is still plenty of closet cases there who don't want to come out because it is fear of assuming minority status.
Ronald Reagan was said to have a ton of gays in his administration.
But
closeted ones.
If we may pull back a little to the global view, the fascinating thing is that all this gay stuff has become such a huge subject of this synod. I think the Vatican is in an uproar over the fact that they have to deal with any of this.
The great liberal minister who was at Yale, William Sloane Coffin, said 25 years ago, this is the issue that Christianity is going to have to grapple with. It's the most central issue, the most important issue, because if you can't deal with this, you're not dealing with us as human beings, which they're not. So one of the human beings, Monsignor Christoph Harumza, He's a Polish priest, 43, Vatican theologian. I thought actually, I didn't put it on the list. Oh, yes, I do. We have a picture of him. Do we have the picture of him and his boyfriend? I think, yeah, there they are. In his Roman collar.
And the boyfriend convinced him to come out.
Eduard is from where?
Spain.
Yes, he's Spanish. So he comes out, he criticizes that
the day before the synod opens.
He said the church's stance is total abstinence and he said total abstinence from a life of love is inhuman. So, some people are criticizing, well, he is a priest and he's not supposed to be with somebody. Well, they're all with somebody.
That's the double whammy here. He didn't just come out as gay, he came out as partnered and sexually active. And that is really challenging.
Look, I did a retreat for seminary directors when I was a kid because I was a gay activist, and they did a private survey among themselves. Catholic seminary directors, 90% said they were sexually active, half with men. That's 30,
And that was 150 years ago.
That was in the 20th century. Back
then.
So
So this Polish priest was immediately fired, no surprise, although they said...
He looks happy.
He's very happy, free at last.
But I have a job for him. Well, because the elderly Italian priest in Trento has been suspended after defending pedophilia on live TV. He said, children often seek affection. So they immediately they suspended him. They only suspended him, but it sounds like a good job for the gay Polish priest and his boyfriend.
Well, the gay Polish priest who came out with his boyfriend and was fired immediately went across the street and joined the LGBT Catholic International Meeting, which is taking place simultaneously with the synod.
13 groups from around the world, Catholic groups.
Right on their doorstep.
I don't know what they hope to accomplish. But
well, what they can accomplish is to be a voice in opposition as the Vatican comes out with its various pronouncements. They're there to be the other soundbite to the international media.
So
yeah, the guy in Trento who was suspended, I understand pedophilia, children seek affection, and they don't get it at home. But gays are sick. And that's why he was suspended. He said that on live TV in Italy.
I appeal to you. Do not be, when they make these softer statements that the Vatican is making, we want to be more welcoming and we need to get with reality, all those kinds of things, ask them the hard question of whether they're going to embrace our love and marry us and everything else and accept women also. That's the big thing, really. Accepting women as equal partners in governance, letting them be priests, bishops, pope, everything. If they don't do that they're not getting with reality.
Well, you and I discussed this in other venues, not just on the air, like when we're walking to and from the studio. And I have always been very, very skeptical, having been raised in a very waspy, anti-Catholic home, that there would ever be any change in the Catholic Church.
Well, and I talked to Bernard Lynch, our Catholic priest friend, who also has a husband living in London, and he said it's not going to change.
Well,
I mean, he wants it to, but it's not going to change.
Yeah, I understand. But I have to say that all this turmoil and all this publicity and all this speaking out, if more priests start rebelling and coming out.
Now that Father John McNeil is in heaven and talking to God, he is sending the Holy Spirit down. That's the way they think. Maybe they'll have to make John McNeil. I'm not making a joke about it. I mean, I'm an atheist. I don't believe any of it. But maybe they'll have to make him a saint because he's going to work a miracle in the Catholic Church, which he couldn't work while he was alive. Although he did help an awful lot of people.
This is beginning to sound like a Saturday Night Live skit.
I don't mean it that way.
But we'll get to that eventually.
I don't mean it that way.
All right. Well, let's
of that.
Let's segue to politics here with a couple of political religious stories.
Okay.
Follow up on the Christian Brothers High School story of Lance Sanderson, who wanted to take a male boyfriend to the homecoming dance.
Tennessee.
I got it.
Tennessee.
So this is in Memphis, Tennessee. So he didn't get to go to the dance. He didn't get to take the boyfriend. He got suspended from school. So a city
for bringing controversy.
Yes. because he didn't get to bring the boyfriend to school, to the dance. So a city commissioner in the Memphis area has now spoken out and said, let the little homo sue.
He also, his name is Clark Plunk, that's his name. He said he hates the term gay. It makes them sound like they're happy.
Gay people are vicious, spiteful people.
Do we look like vicious, spiteful people? We have to deal with
Only
a lot
occasionally.
We have to deal with a lot of abuse from you people, and we are still maintaining our sense of humor.
Also in Tennessee, the County Commission of Blount County, Tennessee, which I think is Maryville, had proposed to it a resolution asking God, remember these are political religious segues,
It's on the money.
asking God to please pass us by in his coming wrath and not destroy our county as he did Sodom and Gomorrah for following the Supreme Court and issuing licenses to same-sex couples who want to get married.
Now, I know you're going to tell us what happened there, but Pat Roberts, I don't usually quote Pat Robertson, but he said all 50 states are going to be flooded if we don't get rid of this same-sex marriage thing.
Well, every time I see something
I don't know why he would start with South Carolina, which was very resistant to this, and not places like Massachusetts, which started it all.
I do fear when I see horrible tragedies like what's happening in South Carolina that these right-wing nuts are going to jump right on that and blame us for it. Not that it gets them anywhere,
that's
but
medieval.
Yeah, it is. Anyway, so this was proposed to the county commission in Tennessee. And we're getting all prepared for what are they going to do? Are they going to appeal to God at the county commission? And the county commission met this week, and they adjourned before this could be voted on. Now, we had a couple of hundred people from our side there ready to testify and protest, all wearing red to represent same-sex marriage or anti-God pleas.
Passion.
Or separation of church and state, but they adjourned.
Good.
Now, the person who presented the resolution is a little upset by that.
Well, I'll give them
May try to bring it up again.
I don't expect anything good to come out of North Carolina's legislature anymore, because it's one of those far right-wing ones that's just so awful. But a bill to override local LGBT rights laws, essentially to forbid them, was slipped into a bill on sex trafficking, and they managed to get it out of there.
Yeah, they killed the amendment.
Yes, they did.
Yeah, so thank you for that, North Carolina.
That was a surprise and a sign of progress.
All right, national news. Well, the Human Rights Campaign held its national dinner in Washington, D.C. Last weekend. And Joe Biden ended up giving the keynote address.
Because Hillary wanted to be on Saturday Night Live.
Well, who can blame her?
Oh, well, she got a good national audience. I think she did a good job there.
Yeah.
She was asked in her little skit about her slowness on same-sex marriage and made a joke about that. It's not too funny, but okay.
I thought it was terrific.
She did well.
Well, first, she did show up at the Human Rights Campaign annual meeting the morning of the national dinner and gave a speech. Now, we considered excerpting both the Clinton and Biden speeches for you to show you snippets, but frankly, they're worth watching in their entirety, and it's very easy to go to the hrc.org website, and you can find both the Hillary Clinton speech and the Joe Biden speech. They're each about half an hour. And they're very similar in their approach to issues. You know what I thought when I saw them, read them, whatever? I thought they had some very hip speechwriters put this together.
I hope so. They heavily emphasize transgender issues because that's the new stuff that we need. And now, Biden emphatically came out for the Equality Act.
They both did, and she has before. And the interesting thing about this is the comprehensive civil rights bill that would amend a number of civil rights bills, not just the Civil Rights Act, but other relevant bills, to update it to include sexual orientation, gender identity, and insert sex in some provisions that where it doesn't exist, and race.
This is our big federal LGBT rights bill, folks, the Equality Act. We all need to get behind this no matter where we live, and no matter what state. Even if you already have protections in your state, you've got to get the federal government to do this.
So Hillary...
although, by the way, President Obama has not taken a stand on it yet.
Well, Hillary has endorsed it before, but came out even more strongly for it in this morning speech. Biden came out for it, and Hillary was saying, you know, I look forward to be able to sign it when I'm president. Biden's attitude was it will pass without making any...
Wait a minute, his boss hasn't said yes yet.
Well, this is the interesting thing, because Biden's given a lot of credit and a lot of sort of headlines for appearing on Meet the Press and endorsing same-sex marriage before Obama had, and that was supposedly
a gaffe.
Yes,
that's what they said at the time.
And forced Obama to then come out and do it. No such headlines, no such exclamation over this one. But in fact, the White House has not endorsed the Equality Act, and a Washington Blade, the D.C. gay newspaper, reporter went to the White House briefing after this Biden speech on Saturday and asked the White House press spokesman, so Biden has endorsed the Equality Act. What about the White House and the president? And Josh Earnest, the White House spokesman, said, I'm not prepared to do anything on that yet. And so then, the LGBT power structure started saying, well, you know, why hasn't he, and what's going on, and what's the problem here? And I think it's really that they're looking at the politics of it. They don't have the coalition together on it yet, and in this Congress, it's not going to get anywhere.
We've got a fairly good coalition behind this bill, and they got a lot of corporations on board on this bill, which is what really counts in this country.
But it's really nice to see, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz has said she expects it in the Democratic platform next year. So I think there actually has been a lot of quick movement on people getting behind it. So in their speeches, Hillary and Joe both did endorse transgender rights in the military to serve openly. And upgrading of dishonorable discharges to honorable for people who've been kicked out over the years. Hillary mentioned specifically violence against transgender women of color, which is certainly a hot button issue. They each got off a good sort of laugh line. Hillary also endorsed lower drug prices, some price caps on that. Hillary said, you know, Ted Cruz, he's trying to outlaw pride parades, doesn't know what he's missing.
She's been doing that for a long time, going to pride parades, I'll give her that.
Yeah, and Biden said you're doing great, you've all done terrific things, but there's still a lot of homophobes out there, most of them running for president.
By the way, I will say, the first time Hillary showed up for a pride parade, all these people with the Hillary signs and everything, and I was a reporter, so I went up to them, I said, how many of you are gay? There weren't that many.
Do you not want straight people in pride parades?
I do, but this is our pride parade, and I wanted to see the strength of her LGBT support.
I think she's got a lot of that.
Now, Hillary, of course, about all this says, now this is going to be hard. And Biden said, it's going to be easy now.
Well,
so who would you vote for?
Well,
the one who says it?
Well, Hillary has had to be dragged along, and here was the little LGBT nuance to her email things. Turns out that 4 years ago, when she was Secretary of State, she got angry at her minions in the State Department because they'd changed forms for State Department employees overseas
for parents.
Yes, to list parent 1 and parent 2.
Instead of mother and father, and she thought this was going to rebound against her politically.
She was afraid of, quote, a huge Fox-generated media store.
God, you can't
the forms
worry about
were changed
Fox.
back to mother and father.
You can't worry about Fox.
Well, 4 years ago. Well, that's what concerns me about Hillary. She's apologized for supporting the Iraq War. She admitted on Saturday Night Live that she was late on marriage equality. She, all along. So if she's president, is she smarter now, or will we continue to see things that she has to apologize for?
I think she would be better than Ted Cruz, for sure.
Or any of the Republicans. But
and we're not partisan here.
We are not.
We're just talking about individuals, because there are some individual Republicans who are pro-gay. Rob
yes,
Portman.
in various ways. So hrc.org, you can see the Biden and Clinton speeches.
Well, as long as we're on politics, we should mention a couple of people who are announcing for Congress. We have a picture of Brian Sims. He's the first out gay legislature in Pennsylvania, and he's challenging Congressman Chakafata in the Democratic primary there in Philadelphia, mostly. Fata's been there since 1994, but he's under indictment for corruption charges, so there's a vulnerability there.
And in Arizona, Pinal County gay sheriff Paul Babu, who's a Republican and is running on sort of Trump-like immigration issues, is running for Congress for the second time. He had to abandon his race a few years ago when there was a little dust-up claim that he had threatened to deport his Mexican boyfriend if the boyfriend outed him.
Well, we had a breakthrough and a little problem in Indiana. The breakthrough, Carmel, Indiana, voted 4-3 for LGBT rights. It had been sponsored by 6 of the 7 council members, and then they peeled some of them off because they started raising objections.
Well, the Catholics and the Baptists showed up to lobby against
But
this.
then they voted 7-0 to say, we're a welcoming community here in Carmel.
But Governor Mike Pence of Indiana, the one who passed the Religious Freedom Restoration Act last year or whenever, wants a Utah-style compromise for a non-discrimination statewide law.
Well, he was meeting with corporate leaders who gave him hell over this and to try to run it by them. Now, the Angie's List guy, who has a big operation in Indiana, what is his name? Angie's List chief, Bill Osterly. He said, what the governor is proposing is a horrible half solution, completely unpalatable, not acceptable, and of course the LGBT groups say that.
Well, to remind you, the Utah Compromise was non-discrimination covering only employment and housing, not public accommodations, and wide religious exemptions.
But then...
But the Democrats are going to go ahead and introduce a full good bill.
So the Republican anti-gay floor leader in Indiana, Judd McMillan, has resigned after a sex video was texted from his cell phone. And then I read, it's not his first sex scandal.
Indiana, who knew? Meanwhile, the New York City Council has unanimously designated the Stonewall Inn as a landmark, and we're awaiting federal designation.
Yes, and I'll talk about the movie later.
Okay.
Stonewall.
Lehigh University has dedicated a Pride Center. Thank you to them.
In California, Governor Brown signed a Right to Die bill and a sex education bill that will update curricula, especially as it relates to HIV/AIDS and LGBT people.
Yes.
Wish we could get this going more around the country. That's the last frontier.
Interesting case in Illinois. The Human Rights Commission turned down a transgender woman who works for Hobby Lobby and wanted access to using the women's room, which Hobby Lobby was denying her. Then it went to the administrative...
I mean, they tell this woman, you've got to use the men's room here.
Yes.
And
even though you live your life as a woman.
So her only option for going to the bathroom, essentially, was to wait till lunch, 6 hours sometimes, and go to a fast food restaurant to use the single-serve restroom there.
Yes.
Then they finally accommodated her about a year ago and said, okay, we'll give you your own individual thing to go to. And she's saying, hey, I got to have access to the women's room. And that was the case.
So she got turned down first by the Human Rights Commission. Then it went to the administrative law judge of the Human Rights Commission, who has said Hobby Lobby must let her use the women's room. This is heinous and discriminatory not to. But then it has to go back to the commission. And meanwhile, Hobby Lobby is refusing to make any change. And she is still being denied access to the women's room.
I thought they were a Christian business with lots of compassion.
Well, it's very interesting how people define their religious obligations.
Some crime stories.
Yes.
Another trans woman has been killed in Philadelphia, Keisha Jenkins. We have a picture of her, 22 years old, shot Tuesday morning, got out of her car at 2:30 in the morning in North Philly. 5 or 6 males assaulted her. The police say it's clear that she was targeted, but they're not sure why. The 21st transgender murder this year.
And in Detroit, a man named Melvin, a gay man who cross-dressed and was killed when he was cross-dressed.
He cross-dressed for a living.
He did. He did not identify as transgender. He identified as gay. He was in his 30s, and he was shot dead on the street.
Anything else there? In Harlem, a man was assaulted Sunday in Marcus Garvey Park by 10 men shouting anti-gay slurs. After asking him if he had marijuana, and he said no, they robbed him and assaulted him. We don't know if he was gay. We just know that they used anti-gay slurs in the assault.
Okay.
And the Tyler Clementi Foundation, which Tyler's been gone for 5 years now, is fighting cyberbullying. So they got this new program. They're going to train lawyers to litigate it. They're pushing for the criminalization of revenge porn. They want to teach teens how to protect themselves. And if you want to learn more about this, you can go to tylerclementi.org. At New York Law School, they've launched the Tyler Clementi Institute for Internet Safety. And in Rock Hill, South Carolina, a mother punished her son for fighting and for making homophobic remarks at school by parading him in a tutu and women's underwear, writing the word bad on the back of his shaved head. For this, she was reported to social services, and we don't have, they're not saying how old the kid was.
Why not just put him in the stocks?
Yeah.
All right. In Oregon, the bakery, Sweet Cakes by Melissa, that was prosecuted or sued for refusing to supply a wedding cake for a lesbian couple, was ordered to pay a $135,000 fine. They have raised $500,000 online for their support.
Crowdsourcing.
These people had also not only refused to make the cake, but had published the lesbians' home address online to attack them.
And they appeared with Kim Davis at the Values Voter Summit.
They did. Well, they're refusing to pay their fine on the grounds that it would cause them financial ruin.
Well,
honest to God. The Bureau of Labor and Industries in Oregon may need to impose a lien or attach their assets to get this fine paid as they continue to raise money online.
I'm for fines that are proportionate to your income. They do this in some place in Scandinavia. So if you're a gillionaire, and you drive too fast, you can get a $50,000 fine. But if you're poor, you might get a $20 fine, which is tough on you, but it's not going to hurt you that much.
In Kansas, they are still resisting elements of same-sex marriage legalization. Several couples are now suing to get both parents' names on the birth certificates of their children, but the state is resisting.
Alabama is using segregation-era laws to avoid issuing marriage licenses to gay couples. It's now optional to issue marriage licenses at all, and 9 of 67 counties are doing that. Of course, this is also the week we learned that Alabama has closed most Department of Motor Vehicle bureaus in black neighborhoods to make it harder to obtain the right to ID in order to vote. 28 counties.
They say it's a fiscal issue, and people can certainly get other IDs.
I call it racism.
Congratulations to Tom Daley, the British Olympic diver who's currently training for the games in Rio.
There he is on the left with Dustin Lance Black. They have announced their wedding in the Times of London.
Yes, their engagement.
And they said it wouldn't last.
Well, they did say it wouldn't last.
Well,
because there's some age difference. But they're still together, and they're announcing their plans for a wedding. I think people will be surprised. And congratulations to Evan Wolfson, who, as he prepares to close his Freedom to Marry office here, now that marriage equality is legal, is on a trip to Europe, to Austria, Germany, and Switzerland to advise local activists there on how to lobby for marriage equality.
And our own Danny O'Donnell is over in Northern Ireland, one of the last places in Great Britain not to have same-sex marriage, at a conference there to tell them how we did it in New York. Danny passed the same-sex marriage bill 5 times in the Assembly before the Senate did anything about it. And Mike Huckabee says same-sex marriage has made single straight people desperate and leads to mass shootings. The shameless.
What?
That's what he said.
Oh my God!
I mean, he is one of the most disgusting individuals I have ever encountered in public life, and that is going pretty far.
You know, he had a brief moment where he seemed like the kinder, gentler candidate, but he has gone really deeply dark.
Around the bend. All right.
Unbelievable.
International news?
Yes, what we have left of it. That we haven't covered
already.
Well,
the Trans-Pacific Partnership, you know, it's the United States and 11 Pacific Rim nations have reached their basic understanding of what they're going to do. Has to still pass the Congress in 2016, but it includes a lot of anti-gay nations like Malaysia and especially Brunei, which has Sharia law, and they're in on this, and they're not being forced to do anything good for gays. It's going to increase the cost of HIV drugs, all drugs, and, you know.
Yes, pharma, you know, big pharma is crying some crocodile tears about it. We wanted 12 years of patent protection and we only got 5 to 8. You got plenty of protection, and your protections are being expanded into countries that formerly did not have it. So don't believe them when they say they're crying. And by the way, Martin Shkreli has still not announced his promised price drop in the cost of diaphragm.
Well, but they've exposed the fact that, you know, Pfizer has raised the price on 133 drugs this year alone.
There are no price controls. There's no competition because they all have monopolies on these drugs. So there is no impetus to keep
We all
prices
have to
affordable.
stand up and demand a better system. I hear Bernie Sanders talking about this. Hillary's spoken about it.
Even Hillary's talking about it now.
But they have to do something.
And
do it now.
Why wasn't Bernie invited to HRC in this whole president?
Well, because Bernie is fighting wealth inequality, and I don't think that's an issue for the Human Rights Campaign.
Not last weekend, anyway.
Which is sad that it's not, because that would affect an awful lot of LGBT people if we had a fairer economic system in this country. In Poland, the president, his name is Duda, D-U-D-A, I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, vetoed the law on gender accordance, which was establishing some framework for recognizing gender transition. It was a pretty conservative one, but now it needs a 3/5 vote in Parliament to become law.
In London, about 100 activists came out to protest and demand that Nigeria repeal its anti-gay laws. There's a picture of the protest. The embassy shut its doors and refused to accept petitions that had 65,000 signatures on them.
Wow. There's a new nonprofit online platform called Alturi, A-L-T-U-R-I, and it's based on Alan Turing. They're online. It seems to be... it's to elevate LGBTI rights globally. The board includes U.S. Representatives Loretta Sanchez and David Cicilline, who's the chief sponsor of the Equality Act. But they're also authors of the Global Respect Act, and it's to help Americans learn about how we can help with international LGBTI issues. Alturi, A-L-T-U-R-I.org.
The conference of LGBT activists from around Central and South America took place in Honduras over the weekend in Tegucigalpa. And it sounded like a great meeting, but there were a few anomalies. The representatives from Cuba were the Mariel Castro crowd, and the competing LGBT dissident activists who don't like the Mariel Castro crowd were very upset that they didn't have a voice and that the government establishment crowd did.
And they didn't get to meet with the Pope either.
No, they did not. And there were some grassroots Honduran activists who objected to the fact that government officials from Honduras were addressing this conference.
Well, they were there to take names.
Well, they stood and turned their backs on them in the middle of this conference because they thought that was inappropriate because Central America, Honduras, Guatemala, those places are not friendly to gay people.
And according to the International Lesbian and Gay Association, Europe, the country of 49 with the best record is Malta.
Ridiculous.
Russia did very badly.
Yeah. All right, AIDS news.
Well, here's the story out of Illinois. The health department is dropping testing for STIs from dozens of county health departments, and they're going to shift their resources to other diseases. This is I think we actually talked about this when we talked about Illinois before. This is about how elections have consequences. I mean, this is just unbelievably, stupid, and is going to cause the spread of more disease. They have a Republican governor now, Bruce Rauner, and he's got a right-wing health commissioner.
And he's fairly right-wing himself. So no, Shkreli has not announced a price drop yet. Activists did show up to demonstrate at his office last week. There's a new report out that says pharmaceutical prices do spike high because most of these drugs and companies now are owned by hedge funds, private equity, venture capital, and they're really just seen as a money-making machine. The pharmaceutical industry is one of the highest profit industries in the world.
The New York Times did a good story, I think, on the new treatment approach in San Francisco.
Test and treat.
Test and treat, easier access to PEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, plummeting infection rates. And
Fauci, PrEP is pre-exposure. PEP is
post-exposure. Post-exposure. Excuse me. But it is easier access to PEP, which is the post-exposure.
And PrEP for all who need it.
And Fauci said he loves the model.
Fauci.
What did I say?
Well, no, I'm just casting aspersions on Tony Fauci.
I'm saying it's even gotten his imprimatur. And there have been 300 new cases of HIV, the lowest ever. 72% are virally suppressed in San Francisco versus 30% nationally who have HIV. Now, it's a rich city. They basically pushed out a lot of poor people out of San Francisco.
And a relatively small city. But if you prioritize this, that's always been our plea.
Like gun control.
Prioritize it, and you can handle this. But if you let it fester without paying attention and without doing anything, then it's going to expand. And you could control the epidemic if you paid attention and were compassionate and gave people the treatment they needed, et cetera.
Now, we told you about Danny Pintaro, the child star who came out as gay years ago, but he came out as having HIV in the last week or so. And he went on The View, and he went on and gave an interview to Us Magazine. And I have to say, first of all, he was treated very badly by the interviewers, abominably.
Including the bisexual Raven Simone.
But he is doing a bad job, and I hope he would spend some time at AIDS groups getting his line down better, because, I mean, it's really brave to come out these days about having HIV if you only got it in recent years, although apparently he's had it for 10 years.
Well, he claims he got it while having safe sex.
Well, oral sex, he said.
He said safe, but I think oral is what he was referring to. People are really appalled that he would claim to have gotten it from oral sex.
He referred to the partner who gave it to him as irresponsible. I mean, he's not, and he uses, they were using words like promiscuous with him and lifestyle.
Rough sex.
Just get it together, please, because you're miseducating people. But those
this is what happens when you're in the closet and you're isolated. You don't get the information, and you're not well educated about this
Who's
stuff.
that guy, Howard Bragman?
Yes.
He takes people aside, and the public relations guy, and helps people come up with a better way to say things if you're going to do these interviews.
Yeah.
Before you come on, you better do it before you come on this show. Now, we'll help you. We'll help you. We love you.
We'd be happy to educate.
Sure.
Well, actually, I was educated a little over the weekend. I went to a gallery tour, art gallery tour
yes.
that Visual Aids
I caught the tail
sponsored.
end.
You did, but you missed
best
half
part.
of it. Well, 3 exhibits really in Chelsea, open now for several weeks. Highly recommend them. Eric Rhine, who's well known for doing a series on AIDS.
That's R-H-E-I-N, isn't it?
Correct, correct. Where he does leaves as sort of mementos of people who've died, but his work is much vaster than that, and I saw it for the first time at this exhibit, and it's gorgeous. And Hunter Reynolds, who's a great activist and provocative artist, has
takes a lot of newspaper articles about AIDS over the years and gay people over the years.
And he's done some things where he mummifies himself, and fascinating. And they were both there to talk about it. And there was also the third exhibit is Barton Benish's work. He died of AIDS some years ago, and he does these intricate display cases with all sorts of little mementos, everything from a vial of his HIV-positive blood to a Warren Beatty dinner napkin from a White House dinner.
So Google these people, and you'll find out where their shows are. They're right down the block from us.
Visual Aids
Yes.
will tell you all about it. And thank you to GMHC, which has adopted the long-term survivors groups from
good.
Friends Indeed, which is closing.
Some entertainment news.
Yes.
Hey, how about that 50 Cent? He's the executive producer of a show called Power on Stars, but he said on Instagram that the ratings for Fox's hit Empire are down this year because too much gay stuff.
Well, they weren't down in the first episode, maybe, and I haven't seen the ratings for the second episode, but Empire is pretty darn popular, and I like it. All right, should we talk about Freeheld?
Yes, that's first on our list.
Okay.
Now, this is the movie based on the documentary by Cynthia Wade, who's going to be on the show next week, Academy Award-winning director of Freeheld, about the story
Yes, there she is.
You found her.
10 years ago.
about
Very good.
Lieutenant Laurel Hester, played by, in this case, in the dramatic film, by Julianne Moore, there on the left, and Ellen Page plays her lover, Stacey Andre. Now, Laurel got cancer. She's a cop, and she wanted to give her pension to Stacey, who was her legal domestic partner.
Right.
And her town,
New Jersey.
Freehold,
Yep.
had an opportunity to do this, but chose not to and made all these excuses. And it's about that political battle and that struggle to win those rights. And it's a very conservative town in Ocean County and New Jersey, and they didn't want to do it. They didn't want to set a precedent. They didn't want to support same-sex marriage coming down the pike. And that's what it's all about. And, you know, it got dismissed in the Times as just a bad TV movie. I thought it was an honest film. I thought the acting was honest and good, and I was very moved by it.
Well, I was very moved by the relationship between Julianne Moore and Ellen Page. And it's, you know, it's almost ludicrous to have Hollywood actresses playing these local lesbians in New Jersey. But they did a great job,
Yes.
and you could really see the emotion between them, and it was
Yes.
very involving, and a lot of people cried throughout the movie who I know who've seen it, and I think it's well worth seeing. And Cynthia will be here next week to give us the whole background story.
I do think they could linger over the love scenes a little bit more. I always feel that they shy away from this with us. They do the same thing in Stonewall.
I wanted bigger crowds at the political meetings. But it's definitely a movie worth seeing. So Stonewall, you saw Stonewall.
At the urging of one of our viewers, he says, you better see this thing if you're going to talk about it. There's the scene at the end of the movie where they're having the rebellion. And I thought that part was at least, you know, handled vibrantly.
Well, Roland Emmerich, the director, makes big action movies.
Okay. But it's all based on the small story of this white kid in the middle who's from Indiana, who's called Kansas. Look, I am really, it depressed me because it was depressingly bad and witless. I mean, the dialogue, the John Robin Bates, I can't believe he wrote it. He's a good playwright. But the thing is, it misses the significance of Stonewall, which was what it led to. That should have started with the riot, maybe have a little lead up to it, but it was the organizing that took place immediately. The amazing thing of people getting together and saying, we're going to fight this forever, until today, and that's not
I
in the
don't
film.
think you have an action movie director wanting to talk about the political
But it's not an action
organizing
movie.
after the rebellion.
It's a little coming of age. You spend half the time back in Indiana with the kid having trouble growing up, a little coming of age thing. But even that's not that well written.
I want to thank you for seeing it so I don't have to.
Well, and I was alarmed in the credits to see that one of the consultants was one of the most infamous Stonewall fraudsters and shakedown artists in the country. Well, that's a shame that they didn't. I mean, so many Stonewall veterans have chimed in online and said, "Why didn't they talk to us about it?"
Exactly. All right, on a happier note, you saw the revival of Spring Awakening.
This is not your mother's Spring Awakening, like the original one we saw. This is with the Deaf Theater West of Los Angeles. And so you've got deaf actors there, including the actress there on the left. I'm sorry, I don't have her name. These are the central young characters. The stars, and it's done very movingly. So there's a deaf actress. She has someone in the background singing the songs and things. Interesting approach, and it works. You know, this is set in 1891. It's all about coming of age and sexual awakening. Of course, it's still kind of a wages of sex thing, you know, where they all pay a heavy price for sex and for.
Well, it's based on something written a long time ago,
in
right?
the 1890s, yeah. But you know, it's got Cameron Manheim and it's got Marlee Matlin and Patrick Page, who is they're all terrific. It's a good show.
I saw the movie Grandma, which is the Lily Tomlin sort of vanity project. I was a little disappointed. She plays a fairly nasty character throughout. I wanted to.
And a lesbian.
Oh, very overtly. It's a very overtly lesbian movie, although her lover is dead. Her main lover, she has a current lover who she's separating from at the beginning of the movie, and they sort of
Do they
go
get
back
to
and
make
forth.
love?
No. But it's all about her trying to get an abortion for her grandchild. It's and Marcia Gay Harden plays her daughter, who's the mother of the granddaughter. There's so many holes in the plot that it sort of lost me at the beginning. You know, it was, oh, we have to raise the money today because I have an appointment for an abortion today. Well, you're only 10 weeks pregnant. Maybe you could wait a week or two and raise the money. Lily has a check coming in 2 weeks, but no, the appointment's today. We have to, you know, it's contrived. And I was not willing to suspend my disbelief quite that far.
I think our movie reviewer, Chris Cooper, liked it a little bit better than you did, yes?
Yeah, look, it's gotten good reviews. People enjoy it. I'm a well-known crank, but I enjoyed Freeheld more.
Freeheld got this horrible review in the Times. It's got 4 stars from Rex Reed. But we also went back to the 1890s for Gross Indecency.
Yes, we did.
This is the 3 trials of Oscar Wilde. There's Moises Kaufman and Michael Emerson, who plays Oscar Wilde. And we saw this 100 years ago, back in the 20th century. But this time, they did it again because they were banned by the Russians.
Yep.
So they raised money for Outright International.
It was supposed to be performed in Moscow. The authorities said no. They did it here.
Sally Field, David Hyde Pierce, Jonathan Groff, Darren Criss, Michael C. Hall. Wow, and Larry Kramer is one of the judges, and Tony Kushner is the other one.
As a benefit for now Outright Action International.
Yes, we'll see you next week with Cynthia Wade, the director of the documentary Freeheld.
And a producer of the Hollywood movie.
Yes.
See you then.
Bye.